Do join in and sing. Dance if you want to. Okay, we'll see then. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to my wife. This is Jackie. Give her a cheer, please. Can I just quote a scripture from the Bible? It says, "Let each man have his own wife." This is my wife, right? That's somebody else's wife.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I hope you've all had a really good day. I have. It's been very productive. Did you have a productive day today? Yes, good, because you get paid to have a productive day. Yeah, so as Charles says, we're going to sing two songs. The first one talks about holding us together. Just bear in a minute while we just put the words up. Oh, right there.
We're normally more professional than this on a Sunday. Yes, I have to come back on a Sunday.
I will trust in you and know that you are with me forever. I'll confide in you, 'cause you're the only answer that matters. Even in the darkness, you will be my light. Even when I'm hopeless, you will be my guide. I will not be shaken, I will not be moved. Even in the chaos, I know you are good. You're the protector, it's you that holds us together. Everything else fails us, it is you that holds us together. I will trust in you, your thoughts and plans of me, they are good, and I will wait on you. I know that you will see me through, even in the darkness, you will be my light. Even when I'm hopeless, you will be my guide. The next song we're going to sing, I don't know if we sang it last time, but it's a really important song, and I think it came out of COVID 2019. This song was birthed during that period, and it's talking about the goodness of God. And we have all been through a terrible time. You know, I don't think, none of us could imagine what it would have been like if somebody told us, but to have actually experienced it and gone through it, it's only by the goodness of God. And so this song just talks about how God has been so good to us.
Keep cheering them as they come down. I breathed a sigh of relief as I saw Teddy walk in. Yeah, I think that's a conversation for another time. um, but it's great to be here again at our Community Engagement Forum. And I think there's much to learn and there's much connections to be made as well. And I think it's important because we all come with our own perspective. Everybody comes with their own perspective. But we want tonight to merge those perspectives so that we can find the best way forward. So I've got to greet a lot of people tonight, and if I forget anybody, please forgive me. So I just want to welcome everybody that's here tonight. Thank you for making the time and the effort to be here. You might need to help me with this, Teddy. Okay. Okay, so we have with us tonight, and I'm going to do it in this order. So we have the chair of the Community Legitimacy Panel, Teddy Burton. Just stand, Teddy. You can cheer him, make him feel like he's important. And I'd just like to welcome the other members of the panel. If you're a member of the Community Legitimacy Panel, just stand at this moment so people can see who you are. I did that because I can't remember all your names, so please, please forgive me. But we're also very honoured to have with us tonight from the police, Chief Constable Rod Hanson. Yes. And also, I don't know what order rank it is, so if I just call names, please forgive me. DCC Sean West. This is where I start to struggle now, because I've forgotten the titles and I can't see them on here. So we've got Jane Probert. Tell us your title, Jane. Chief Superintendent. How could I forget that? And if you're from the police tonight, please stand. Right. So you know why I did that. Right, so it's good to have you all here tonight. I'm glad that we've started in this way. There's lots of smiles that I can see. I hope by the end of tonight there'll still be lots of smiles that are going through. But there are some serious things that we want to address, we want to talk about tonight. And we really appreciate the officers and the police that make themselves available for this evening to do that. Just a few housekeeping. You probably discovered that already where they are, the gents and the ladies' toilets. The gents, as you look at that door, are to the left. The clue is it says gents on the door. And then the ladies are to the right. If you need water or anything like that, or tea or coffee at any time, please discreetly and quietly just go to the side. They'll be available for you, but you've got to serve yourself, sorry. So I'm not going to stay any longer. I'm going to invite... Okay, they're both pointing to each other. But before I do that, before they throw a coin and decide who comes, so there are press here tonight, and we're also streaming live as well, just for your knowledge. Just to say to anybody from the press tonight that please, if you're going to share any voice information, please, or video, please get the permission of the individual before you do that. Is that okay? Fantastic. I got a thumbs up, so that's great. And don't be surprised if someone from the press comes to you at the end and they may just want to have a quick interview just to gather your thoughts on the evening as well. So I'm going to hand over now to Chief Constable Rod Hanson. Just cheer him as he comes.
Good evening, everyone. I've been told to keep this to under 2 minutes. That's about 120 seconds, I think, according to my maths. So I'm going to be very, very quick. First of all, thank you so much to Pastor Charles and to Teddy for inviting us to come for another engagement evening with you. It's a pleasure to be here. Lots and lots of colleagues from across the constabulary in so many roles keen to be here as well. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment, if I may. Specifically, thank you to our members of the community giving up another evening. It's not the warmest of nights, and I'm sure you've got lots of other things you could be doing, but thank you so much for giving up your time to come and converse with us and get to know us a little bit better, I hope. Can I echo my thanks to members of the legitimacy panel? They have been working with us now for so long. They help us, they scrutinise us, they hold us to account, and they help us to learn and get better. And they do all that because they care. So thank you so much from me to you. To the event leads who've helped to organise this event, there's a huge amount of work, lots and lots of people involved, but Sandra, who I know can't be here, I don't think Sandra's with us tonight. She's had lots of issues to contend with, and she's doing a magnificent job. But thank you to Sandra, Atira, Carrie, Atty, Chris, Emma, Lydia, Gary, and Daryl. Of course, the AV engineer as well for helping us. Just in terms of who the police proponents are, Sean West here is our Deputy Chief Constable and fundamentally the link to Teddy and the CLP. So thank you, Sean, for leading the way on that. And Jane is amongst many, many other things, looks after public contact and a lot of other things, operation as well, but is the lead for us in relation to the police race action plan. It's really important that Jane is here, soaks up the conversation and plays back any learning for us. There's lots of my other senior colleagues here as well. One of our brand new assistant chief constables, sorry to embarrass Donna, but Donna's brand new, come all the way from sunny Nottingham, and we're absolutely delighted to welcome Donna to the constabulary, and we wish you a long and happy career with us as well, Donna. To those staffing the stands at the back, a lot of work's gone into that as well. For those who have provided the food, and I've had the pleasure of trying it before, it's gorgeous, so thank you for the food and the skill that's required to prepare it so well. And also to our police community support officers. I don't know if you saw them when you came in, but I think we're absolutely blessed with PCSOs in the constabulary. There are some outstanding ones here in the community. There are 5 of them out in the cold, but with very warm hearts. All 5 of them re-rostered their rest. They should have been on rest days today, and they all wanted to be here. So they do a fantastic job. They're out there not having a cup of tea, but I'm hoping that they'll come back in and join us before too long. Fundamentally, before I sit back down and hand over to Teddy and Sean, this is a really, really important opportunity for us to listen more than we speak. I know I'm chatting a little bit and quite quickly at the moment, but that's really to say thank you for holding us to account, for challenging us, to give us a way forward to improve the service that we provide ultimately to all of our communities. We've always thought that we start with as friends, we have a vibrant conversation, and so it should be. And then hopefully we leave as better friends. And I hope that's what we can do this evening. And thank you to the wonderful musicians as well, who always play us in and then settle our shoulders at the end of it before we go and enjoy some food. So just a huge thank you from me to all of you for helping, hopefully, to create a very wonderful evening. And my final point is we have Nick Evans here as our Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, representing Chris Nelson, who is our Police and Crime Commissioner, who asked me to send his sincere apologies, but Nick is here with us and absolutely keen to enjoy and join in the conversation as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Very good evening to everyone. Come on, man, let's try that again. A very good evening. It's a cold one, but it's a good one, isn't it? Okay, every day we're alive is a victory, right? Okay. So a very good evening, and thank you for coming out on a very cold evening in the middle of winter. It's very much appreciated. It's quite appropriate that for the purposes that we are here to discuss, that this is happening in a church, because there's an old Baptist hymn that says, you cannot build the brotherhood of man without the fatherhood of God, right? So it's an appropriate environment that we're meeting in this evening. I won't go into the history of the community legitimacy panel because that has already been stated in previous meetings and so on. And there will be a holding slide that goes up. In fact, if we could have that slide that just says who we are as the panel, that would be helpful. But I want to again thank the members of the Community Legitimacy Panel who for the last 3.5 years have been working assiduously behind the scene, doing two principal things, helping to hold the police to account in how they use their powers toward Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. The term we now use is ethnically diverse communities. And secondly, at the same time, to try and build good relations between the police and these communities. The names of the members are on screen, and you have seen those who are present here this evening standing early. And I want to thank you all, my colleagues, for all the work you've been doing. Thanks also to the police leaders who have engaged with us over this time. And just to make you aware that things have been changing, not at the pace or to the extent we would want it to happen. But for example, we've had changes in the stop and search policy, which will be coming on stream pretty soon. And Deputy Chief Constable West will talk about that in the presentation afterward. But there are two principal things. In April of last year, the IOPC, the Independent Office for Police Complaints made a recommendation, a set of recommendations for improving this perennial problem of stop and search, one of which was the smell of cannabis should no longer be used as a gateway to a search, to stop somebody to say, I smell cannabis on you, so I want to search you. That is something we've been discussing with the police to try and get that as a matter which is addressed locally, and you'll hear more about that. But another thing which we want to address is the sense of treating people with courtesy and dignity, which the Police and Criminal Evidence Act also requires in the codes of practice, and the police's own code of ethics requires that people are treated with dignity and courtesy. That's one of the things. When you are stopped and searched by the police, you should normally be given a form which have a series of a lot of information on there. One of the things which will be added to that form is at the end of it, people will now be asked, do you feel that you have been treated with courtesy and with dignity? And if the answer is no, then there will be a process internally to follow up on that. So things are changing. Another change we've had is that you may have heard about the case of Child Q. When we heard about that case, we looked at the data locally, how many of our young people in Gloucestershire have been strip searched by the police, and we've made some recommendations to make it mandatory that if a minor is going to be strip searched, there must be an appropriate adult present, and there will be a process. If you're arrested and you're in custody, there is somebody called a PACE inspector. Again, Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. The PACE inspector kind of manages how you are treated in the cells. And we want an equivalent so that if someone is being searched in the community, like a child in their school, an equivalent inspector must give permission before that can happen, because they must be apprised of the facts which will lead to that search. So we are having changes in the background. Some of these haven't fully been effected on the streets yet, but we want the commitment which is at the leadership levels in the police to cascade down through the middle tier of leadership and down to the officers on the street. So some of those changes will be mentioned some more in a little while. But I just want to emphasize this point before I go further. Gavin Stevens, who is the chair of the National Police Chiefs Council, on Thursday of last week was reported in The Guardian as saying that the policing nationally, he accepts is institutionally racist. I don't want the discussion this evening to be about that. You know why? The community knows the answer to that question already. Are the police institutionally racist? The community said that decades ago. And it is the community who gets to answer that question, not the police, okay? If I'm running a restaurant and you come and you buy my food and I ask you the question, well, how was the food and the service? You say the food was horrible and the service was worse. And I say to you, I don't think so. You're not coming back, are you? So if the police are providing a service to the community, it is the community who gets to determine whether that service is of the standard we should have rightly expect it to be. Am I right about that? The question of whether policing is institutionally racist is a matter of fact. It is not a matter of opinion. There's a specific definition to that statement. And you can look at the Macpherson report for that. All you have to do then to decide whether any institution is look at the data. What do the facts tell us on stop and search, on use of force, all of these measures? And the answer resoundingly is yes. Now, our local police leaders are people who are driven by objective fact, and they are on record that they're on the right side of this argument. So we don't need to stay there. The answer is yes. The question now is, well, what do we do about it? And that's what this evening is about. The National Police Chiefs Council in May of last year, or 2 years ago, published the Police Race Action Plan to address this very concern that legitimacy in the eyes of black community is woeful where the police is concerned, up to 20 percentage points lower than the general population, the level of trust and confidence black communities have. So they published that plan. It has about 53 objectives, I think, and we have honed in as a CLP on 8 key priorities which we believe, if delivered locally, within the next year or two, people will start to see tangible changes to policing locally. Now, I don't have time to go into the arguments about why we have to focus on black people in this question. There's 100 and odd years of history to tell you that, so I don't have time for that this evening, but you can look at the document, and the NPCC have already given the reasons. We can talk about that later. I do want us, therefore, to go into this discussion this evening with a solutions-focused mindset. We want to fix the perennial problems which have been there in policing, and we want to also celebrate where there is good practice and highlight that too. And I want to emphasize what the Chief Constable said earlier. There are some outstanding ambassadors for the police working in our local community, and I'm referring to the police community support officers. 5 of those young people were supposed to be on their rest days today, on their days off. When they heard we were having this meeting, they changed their day off to be here, because when we plan events in the community, we emphasize that we must use police officers and staff who are known locally. We don't want people coming from out of town who don't know our people and want to deal with them in any particular way. So, whether it's sports days, community engagement forums, the Barton Street PCSOs, they are outstanding. They always make themselves available, and we're, yes. Andrew Bennett, Stuart, and now I'm going to forget Josh, Emily, Adam, and Cara. Have I missed anyone? They are outstanding. Can we have another cheer for the PCSOs? The police leaders which are here will tell you that in meetings when it is required to get tough, we get tough. But when we are going to celebrate good things, we do that too, right? Okay, so finally, I want to just make this point. The author of the poem called The Negro's Complaint, in a stanza of the poem said, "Fleecy locks and dark complexion cannot forfeit nature's claim. Skin may differ, but affection dwells in black and white the same." That's the spirit in which I encourage us to have the discussions this evening. As one other songwriter says, it all comes down to love, right? If we love our fellow human beings, if we have a spirit of humanity in us, whether we're police officers, doctors, nurses, teachers, community members in other disciplines, if we treat people on the basis of their humanity and look beyond just the fact that this person looks different from me, we can overcome a lot of the problems in the world. It might sound simplistic, but let's try it and see. Come back and tell me afterward if it works. All right, so thank you very much. We are going to now just go through some of those key priorities, and we aim to maximize the amount of time you get to ask questions this evening. So Assistant Chief Constable West and myself are going to do a kind of double act where we will highlight some of the priorities and the actions we're asking the police to take. He will talk about the response that the police are taking and will be taking, and we will then give you the opportunity to interrogate the panel about those things or to share your own experience of policing locally. If we could get the first slide up, please. Before we get started, we'd like to...
Good evening, Sean West, Deputy Chief Constable. Great to see so many here, and look forward towards updating those CLP 8 priorities.
Okay, thank you. So I won't bother reading through all of the priorities and so on to save time, because you can see, can we please get the objectives up? So I will just highlight some of the actions which we're asking for under those objectives. I've already mentioned the fact that we want to see people treated with dignity. This is already something which should be happening based on the police's own code of ethics. And I think the code of ethics is being updated to have statutory force. Am I right about that, John?
It is. It
Okay.
was held for a while, but it's now back in play.
Okay, so that means that the police will be required by law to abide by those ethical standards. Am I right? That's the discussion which I understand is happening.
It is. There's a point around duty of candour,
Okay.
and we're just trying to work through some of that.
Okay, well, it's an ongoing discussion. Okay, so first of all, what we're asking the police to do is to ensure that community views are considered in PSD decision making. What do I mean by PSD? It's the Professional Standards Department, which is headed by Chief Superintendent Alistair Steiner. Superintendent Alice Steiner, thank you. We want the police to utilize a review and assessment panel for selected PSD cases and work towards a period of 6 months to conclude PSD complaints where there are no criminal considerations and keep complainants updated regularly. On average, at the moment, if you make a complaint against a police officer or staff, it takes somewhere between 12 months to 18 months for the complaint to be seen through to its conclusion. What we are saying is, it's already difficult enough for people to come and complain to the police about the police. When they come, they shouldn't be waiting for a year and a half. Try and bring that down to a target of 6 months, and let's see if we can get people's complaints resolved, and in the process of doing so, keep people updated on what is going on.
So this is very much about your restaurant analogy in terms of the service you get really matters, and therefore what we want to do is immerse our community and immerse the community literacy panel in terms of being that judge and jury and telling us how things are, because we care and the service you get matters, and therefore we need to listen to those priorities. Similarly, we want you to have a look at some of our complaints and professional standards matters, and you'll see more around opportunities where the CLP are really proactive around that, and we're very grateful for your efforts. Thank you.
Objective number 2, thank you, is to bring to an end the disproportionate use of force towards members of ethnically diverse communities. When we talk about use of force, we are talking about arresting people, handcuffing people at the roadside for a standard traffic stop, all the way up to tasering people or worse. The whole, whichever of those measures you look at, black people are disproportionately having force used against them, and we want that to be brought down. So, we want to have a scrutiny panel which will look at the constabulary's use of force, how it's used against ethnically diverse communities, and I think one such panel has already been established. The constabulary will increase representation of panel members for the use of force panel, meaning this is another opportunity where we're asking community members to get involved. We can't change the game by shouting from the sidelines. Let's get on the pitch. This is an opportunity to go and look at some of the complaints and be a voice there to try and bring those numbers down. Include community voice in training on the use of force, including taser and firearms training. Now, we are setting up taser training at the police headquarters in March, and we are going to be opening that up to community members. If you want to come and look at how the police do the training on the use of taser and give a voice on that, the Community Legitimacy Panel will be doing that. We've done this before on officer safety training, and we're going to do this again with the taser training.
So this is about where we over-police and under-protect, and policing is a real privilege. We police by consent, but there are times when, of course, we do need to use force, irrespective of any diversity. And therefore, we're keen, again, to immerse community members so that you can see what we do, the level of training, the points at which you can use a taser, the points at which you cannot, and try and understand that. And very much as part of the LAM report, explain or change. So we will explain why we do something, but we will genuinely listen to your perspective of things, so that if it's not right, we'll seek to change it so that we can strike that common ground.
And just finally, if I may emphasize that, the last point there about the action we're asking for is the review of firearms officers using or responding to non-firearms incidents. So some of the complaints which have come to the panel include the concern around a traffic incident happens on the street, the police are called, who comes out? Armed officers. You have the ARVs roll up and you have 8 armed officers coming out to deal with a traffic incident. And we are saying that that looks to the community like overkill, like over-policing. Now, we have been challenging the police on that, and they have been trying to explain to us that that is a question of deployment of resources as they have available, but we are still working out a way to see how we can minimize that impact on the community.
I think in the interest of time, that question is likely to come up in the 90 minutes of question and answer, so perhaps let's unpick that, but we've listened and we've spent a lot of time listening to that aspect of which we absolutely acknowledge there is an operational mandate to some of this upon which we cannot move, but what we absolutely can do is seek to change the understanding and lived experiences of our authorised firearms officers so that we can adapt and adjust our behaviours accordingly and de-escalate incidents quicker.
And the third objective is linked somewhat to the second. It's about bringing to an end the disproportionate use of stop and search toward members of the ethnically diverse communities. And the data keeps telling us that black men between 16 to 35 make up the bulk of the data on stop and search. So we are asking for a scrutiny panel to consider whether individuals were treated with dignity and respect, and I've made reference to the question being added to the police data system. And the question to be included about whether you feel you've been treated with dignity and respect on a stop and search. And that will be completed by officers. Remove the use of cannabis smell as a ground for stop and search. We have mentioned that. And record and publish ethnicity data on traffic stops. At the moment, there is no mandate, no mandatory requirement that if you are stopped in your car, that the police need to record your ethnicity. So there is a gap there in the data for us to see whether there's disproportionality there in how, in traffic stops as well.
Yeah. You covered my points well. Stop and search is intrusive. It, of course, has a legitimate purpose in terms of keeping our communities safe, including your good selves. But we are actively looking at how we can make sure that we're really robust around those occasions on which we can stop search and those occasions on which we should not. And the smell of cannabis is absolutely one of those. We hear you.
Okay, so priority 4 is around ensuring that there is a demonstrable evidence of a zero tolerance in policing, whether it's in operational planning or in policies or in the delivery, whether it's in disciplinary processes and internal promotion and progression. So we are asking for the police to have an independent periodic review, so get someone external to the police, independent of the police, to come in and look at their policies and procedures and identify whether there is bias in these processes and come up with solutions to resolve those. And also to look at this as it relates to recruitment of officers and staff from diverse backgrounds, and not just to get them in through one door and then people feel unhappy and go out through 2 other doors, but to find a way to keep these people, because the police can spend a lot of money trying to have recruitment events and to recruit people and to train them, but the best recruiting sergeants are the people who already work for the police from these communities. If they go to the community and say, I have a very good time at my job, you should come and join me, you should come and have this experience, that's the most convincing recruitment technique. So we want the people who are there already to be treated well. We want the policies to change to make it more friendly to people from diverse backgrounds. And that will be the best way of recruiting. And also to implement external independent audits of the procedures to analyze how effective the current delivery approaches are, ensuring there is zero tolerance, both to racism and to other forms of discrimination.
So this is about culture, inclusion and behaviours. Yes, policies absolutely underpin that, but as we know, culture eats policy for breakfast. So for that reason, and here tonight is Assistant Chief Officer Richard Saunders. Richard is our most senior police staff member within the constabulary. Richard personally leads on this and is making valiant efforts towards this, hence the reason for being this evening. Thank you, Richard.
We're going to wrap up this in 3 minutes so that you can have the opportunity to ask questions. So we might not get through all of them. But I think objective 5 is a really significant one. To implement a comprehensive training program covering the history of racism in Britain, racism in policing, the trauma experienced by black communities, and possible solutions, including a model of community policing with empathy. This is one of the areas in which I think the CLP and the community can make a massive difference through sharing the experiences that we have had with policing. And the community knows the answers to these things, right? If you've been on the receiving end of bad service, then you know what good service should look like. Do you agree? Exactly. So we want to hear from the community about this. And we want all officers and staff to be trained by competent external trainers on the history of policing of the UK's black communities over the last 100 years. If we go back to 1919, we had race riots across the whole country, from South Shields to Liverpool to Cardiff. There is a long history. And in the year after that, you had the first racist piece of legislation passed by the British Parliament. It was to police black sailors as they came into and out of UK ports. Black sailors had to walk around with their identification, and people who were British subjects, if they couldn't provide it, were prevented from coming into their own country. And that followed on from the race riots of 1919. There's a long history here, and police officers need to know why, when a black young man on the street says, "You're stopping me because I'm black," he's not calling that officer racist. He's talking about the 19 times he's already been stopped and never been found with anything he's been searched for. The history needs to be understood. And even when we talk about institutional racism, we're not saying every police officer or staff is racist. We're saying the structures within policing allow for racism to happen.
Lived experiences matter, and to that end, clearly inform the way you perceive policing and the way policing is perceived. So to understand where we're going, we need to understand what's in the rearview mirror in that background, and that has to start and finish with training.
And so I've said that I want you to have the opportunity to have most time this evening to talk to the panel about these matters. So we won't go through the other three in detail, but I'll allow DCC West, if he wants to flag up anything from those three, to do so. On your chairs, you should have a one-page document which has these objectives and expected outcomes on there. So even though we don't go through it here, you can have a look at it in your seats. You should also have the Better Together magazine, which, as the name suggests, Sandra, her team, Richard's team, they are working on this to keep the community informed about what is happening in policing. So please have a look at that. And the National Race Action Plan is on a one-page document there as well. And you can go and find the full document online to inform yourself of what is going on there. I do want to flag up one thing which has come up in 2 consecutive engagement forums like this, and it was the stopping of lone black females by police officers in lonely places late at night. Black women have raised that concern in 2 of these forums over the previous 2 forums like this we've had. We've had a lot of discussion about that in the background, because against the background of what happened to Sarah Everard, even if you didn't understand it before, we now understand why women would be concerned about this, right? And why black women in particular would be concerned about this. And again, disproportionality hits our black sisters just the same. It doesn't get talked about as it does for black men, but our black sisters are on the receiving end of very unpleasant experiences as well. So we've been talking to the police about different options which they should consider. We've had difficult conversations about that. Some of the times the police have in fact come back with some legitimate policing concerns why they couldn't do the things we've been asking for, but we are saying that we can't stop there. There has to be a solution found so that both the policing objective gets met, but that black women feel safe when they are stopped by the police as well. So one of the things that we are considering, and it should really come from Sean, so I'll leave it to him. You go ahead and deal with that part.
So
Sean.
we heard you. It was loud and clear at the last Community Engagement Forum, and there's no doubt about it. It bites down on the intersectionality of a black woman being stopped. That's what we heard, and therefore the need for a safe space. And we've bounced all kind of ideas around. What we'd like to do is involve you in some of that problem solving, because we'd like a focus group to work with the CLP, to work with our team, to understand what some sensible measures may be like. Now, to reassure, of course, the prevention element that we've done around all of that, the Chief spoke around a zero tolerance in terms of the suspensions that we have around gross misconduct. We take a very, very sharp, acute look at any intelligence or information that suggests that our officers are predatory or discriminatory, and indeed we've been true to our word in that in terms of those suspensions and that subsequent practice. So in terms of vetting, yes, of course, that is a preventative measure, and indeed our suspensions follow suit as well. We have body-worn video, and therefore we absolutely check that where an officer is stopping somebody, that there is a corresponding body-worn video footage, because you'll understand if there was not, then that may raise some questions as to why that's the case. But ultimately what we hear is, if I am that person that's being stopped, what sensible precautions can I take? Because I recognise that I must stop, because indeed that would be a criminal offence if not, and indeed you'd want to do your citizen's duty of supporting that interaction. But there are some sensible measures, are there not, that we can start to put in place. But we want to test some of those, and therefore our appeal tonight is for you to support a focus group with the CLP, with the police, so that we can come to some sensible measures. And indeed, if we can test and achieve those, then of course we can start to promote some of those much broader than this audience, because it's not just this audience, I'm sure, that are impacted by it. Does that seem a sensible suggestion?
So what we're saying is we're asking our black sisters, our Asian sisters, women from ethnically diverse backgrounds to come forward this evening, or if you know somebody who might be interested, to work with us, the CLP and the police, to find solutions to this particular issue, but also to the broader issue of violence and intimidation against women and girls. So we would really love to have input, because it's one thing for people to sit in boardrooms or meetings and come up with ideas. We want solutions which are going to work on the street. So we won't go on any further. We have an outstanding young man who is a member of the panel. I'm very proud of that fact. Jamil, who you will hear on Radio Gloucestershire, the jam man. He's the man who tells you to get through traffic, right? Okay. All right. And we also have a pillar of our community at the back, Carol. Carol and Derek need no introduction in Gloucestershire. They are the heart, the beating heart of this community. So they are both going to be facilitating the discussion now. And could I please have a volunteer to be the person with the roving mic? I'm going to invite the panel members to come forward and to take your seats. We have Professor Jermaine Revalier, who I'm very pleased to say is the Vice Chair of the Community Legitimacy Panel. Please come forward and take your seat, Jermaine. We have Chief Constable Hanson, Deputy Chief Constable West, Mr. Richard Saunders, who is the Head of People and Business, and Chief Superintendent, soon to be, shall I? Okay. You'll hear more about Jane pretty soon. But Chief Superintendent Probert will also be sitting on the panel. Have I missed anyone? But we also have other excellent and senior leaders who are in the audience who will pitch in. And I want to again welcome Nick Evans, who is the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. So my fellow community members, it's over to you for the next 40 minutes. And I'm going to, yes, Pastor Charles.
So can I just say, for those, because we're live streaming tonight, just to capture the panel, we need to move the chairs onto the stage.
Onto the stage. Okay,
Sorry.
no problem.
Let me do that.
No problem. Yeah. So will we need to move this to the side as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. You can get to feel what it feels like for me on a Sunday. Do we need more chairs? How many?
We probably need another one.
Okay, take this one.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Please. Okay, do we have enough? I think we do.
And then this one.
Okay, so I'd ask you, please, we want both the panelists to be very prompt in your responses and concise in responding to questions. And please, we're asking to be concise in your questions as well. We have very limited time and we want as many people to speak as possible. So can we welcome Carol and Jamil, please? Oh, since we're also live streaming, we will have questions coming from those who are watching online, who we thank you very much for joining and welcome as well.
Yeah, they're both good. Both good.
He's like, I'm being punished for something, right?
Or recognition, perhaps, Daddy.
Better from you, sir.
Hi. Thank you very much. I'm Said Hansdott, one of the former Labour councillors. When you say about this strip and search for the minors, how did that get into the system that the police can do that without an adult supervision?
I think the case that we were talking about was we referred to as child Q. So the fact of the matter is that should never have happened. So we should never be doing strip searches on children without an appropriate adult present. So that's why I think there was so much outrage. What we did as a result of that in Gloucestershire is we went through all of our data around all of our strip searches, all strip searches and of minors, but actually we've never done a strip search on a minor in public. So the big issue was, if that's happening in a public domain, we don't have the safeguarding in place. So to answer your question, the law doesn't allow for that.
But did it actually happen, or was it?
Not in Gloucestershire.
But around the country it did?
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get to here anyway, regardless of whether it was in Gloucestershire or somewhere else. But it did happen. But how did it get in there? That's the thing. That safeguarding, what is the point in that then if you're going to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, because ultimately the officers acted outside the boundaries of the law, and that's the bottom line. So utterly unacceptable, disgraceful, and we're proud to say that hasn't happened in our county, but we won't take it for granted, and that's why we've put in the measures that we have. And as Teddy described, we have changed our policy so that if any officer is to do a strip search or consider a strip search in the public domain, they have to contact the on-duty inspector. The reality is it's not going to happen.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
That's okay.
Who's next on this side? Just raise your hand, make it a little bit easier so we can see if you've got a question.
Right.
Can I please also ask everyone, the objectives we spoke about and which are on the documents, please tell us if we have them right. If you don't think those should be the priorities, tell us what they should be. And if you think those are appropriate, we need to know as well so we can represent your views effectively.
Can I ask a question? You talked about a taser and training. Do officers get training in mental health issues? Because a lot, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I can only go by the media, but a lot of guys who are tasered have some form of mental health issue. So when you talk about this training on taser, is mental health a part of it?
Thank you for the question, Carol. So I'll take it initially, and it may well be colleagues also wish to contribute to. So policing is quite a special role, and that's not me bigging up the role that we do because we're here, but we really are the sort of the Swiss Army knife of public service. We're expected to do lots of different aspects because we're the only resource that tends to be there 24/7, 365 days a year. So we're not mental health practitioners. Of course we're not. We're police officers, we're police staff and police volunteers. That said, of course we seek to understand vulnerability, mental health, impairment, so that we can recognise it. And therefore, as part of the taser training, which is quite significant, then that training seeks to identify mental health, impairment or vulnerability so that we can adjust the style in which we speak with that person and indeed use force with that individual. But there is a huge underline there, which is we are not mental health practitioners. Turning to another point, you'll have heard no doubt of right care, right person, where many of our police services up and down the country, of which there are 38 in England and Wales, are mandated by the Home Office and the Department of Health and Social Care to redistribute the care that's needed for mental health and vulnerable individuals within our community to those that are better placed, so that someone that's genuinely suffering is best dealt with by someone that's in the integrated care or health system. So that is indeed recognition of the fact that all too often we are the first attendee and the last attendee at a mental health incident. I don't think that's right, because we're not well placed to deal with that. Of course, we'll always be noble citizens and we'll always seek to attend, but we are fundamentally not trained as mental health practitioners. We have some understanding, and of course we apply that understanding. But back to Teddy's point, it's around humanity. We seek to understand that person's need, and we adjust the way that we do our policing accordingly. We don't always get it right, and that's why we rely upon you to tell us when we don't get it right, so we can explain or change. Does that answer your question, Carol?
Yeah.
Is there anything colleagues would wish to contribute?
Specifically in relation to taser, and it would apply to firearms as well, though. So if you're talking about officers training in relation to mental health, so one of the first things those officers must consider is principles we call EMD. So are there any emotional issues, other issues around alcohol, drugs, or mental health? And in those scenarios, we call it, our main principle would be back off time and space. And so just to consider what's being presented in front, because of course people that are in trauma crisis with mental health are going to behave very differently, and sometimes that's mistaken for aggression or something else. But just some reassurance, there's a huge amount of emphasis and training for both taser and firearms officers in relation to that specific issue.
If I may just add, Carol.
Sorry?
This is one of the areas where training is so important. And when I say training, I mean comprehensive training that includes the voices of black people, right? If you read Dame Angelini's report in 2017, she looked at 10 years of deaths in police custody and in deaths of other state institutions. And one of the contributors to that report was Inquest. Now, Inquest supports people where they have family members who died at the hands of the state. And they gave some evidence to the Angelini review where they quoted police officers who they had interviewed, right? And some of those officers, talking about the death of Sean Rigg and the other gentleman who died on the Newcastle police station, his name escapes me at the moment. He was a serving British soldier. He died doubly incontinent on a police cell floor in Newcastle while 3 police officers stood laughing at him when he was writhing in pain, saying he couldn't be in so much pain at all. But quoting police officers in the Angelini report, Inquest said that many police officers looked at black men and said that he's the biggest man I've ever seen. And he's so strong. I've never seen a man that strong. And so when you have those perceptions of somebody, what is your resort? If you think somebody is the biggest person you've ever seen, if you think they are aggressive and violent, what are you going to do? You're going to protect yourself, right? And so you go to your taser or worse. So this is why training is important. Inquest made the point that what happens in those circumstances that many people who have mental health issues are considered in the language of the report as being mad and bad. And that has to be addressed so that police officers are trained to understand how people might present if they are going through a mental health episode. Like the footballer who was kicked in the head so hard by a police officer that his boot prints were left on the man's head. He tasered him 3 times and he died as a result. That's the first police officer who has been to prison for 30 odd years, even though many black people have died at the hands of the police. Now, I'm sorry if I'm going on about this, but I'm trying to make the point of how important it is for our views, community views, to get into policing so that an officer who shows up at a scene, whilst not being a specialist in the field, might think twice, is this really what it looks like on the surface, or do I need to think a bit more clearly? And therefore, training has to include, before any force, a lot of strategy for de-escalation so that we don't need to make it worse. We try to make it better. I hope I've made sense from all that talking.
So just one quick thing. I think your question is an important one. And it's important because if we join the dots, we know that non-white people in this country are more likely to have mental health difficulties. That's a fact. We also know that people from ethnically diverse backgrounds are more likely to be treated poorly by all of the services that we are exposed to. So not just the policing. In health, we see recently that black women are 7 times more likely to die during childbirth, for example. We see that black people are 6 times more likely to be sectioned for mental health. Joining all of these dots together, what we need to be what we need to be careful of is that we're not, that the police in particular are not passing the responsibility onto other services who are going to treat the community as badly as they have been historically. So I think that's the thing that we need to keep in mind as well.
Okay, got next question here. Raphaelia?
I was just going to ask, because you were talking about, you said when the officers are trained, it's you said back off time and space, and I was just wondering if it's something that is given to them when they go out. Is it a tick box thing that they have to do? That was the first question. And the second question I was going to ask is, if in the hiring process, during the hiring process, is that looked at or even put in, put in the job description as a major bonus? Because if you do come from a mental health background, then you'd be an officer that's deployed or maybe looked to if another officer doesn't have that information or have that, impetus to say, you know what, I need to check this. There'd be someone that they could at least ring, much like, in the case of, a child being searched without protection. So thinking that actually maybe there needs to be a mental health officer on watch at all times, so that those that don't have that knowledge that are out could at least say, hey, look, I've got something I'm uncertain of, but at least they're putting someone else in the picture. That means everybody knows what's going on, even if they don't have the actual training, that there is someone that can assist in that. So yeah, just wondering if that's a thing.
Listen, the police are big, powerful organizations, and I have to go to Newcastle sometimes, so I want to correct the statement I made earlier. I don't think it was in Newcastle. I think it was Humberside that the brother died on the police floor. So if any Newcastle officer is watching, I did correct you, right? Okay. It doesn't take away from the value of the point, but it's right that we get the facts correct.
Thank you for the question. I would suggest going back to the point about AFOs, firearms officers, and taser-trained officers. Jane's absolutely right. That's absolutely drilled into the training. It's fully accredited, and it's pass-fail. And it has to be requalified for after certain periods of time, usually about 3 years. So that's an area of comfort for us. We just need to make sure that they apply it properly. But there's a lot of scrutiny around firearms deployments, as you can imagine, and so there should be. What we're trying to explore, and this is where Richard's area of expertise comes in, is how we can not only talk about de-escalation for general patrol duties, but giving people and our staff the awareness to know that if the relationship gets off to in the wrong direction, on the wrong foot, sometimes we just don't gel, do we? It's having the ability to step back and let another colleague come in and maybe start again, reset it so that we can have a proper conversation that doesn't escalate. So that subtlety sounds easy. It's quite difficult to build into the training, but I know Richard's team are exploring looking at that. Just in relation to added expertise, the DEP's already talked about right care, right person. It's a great initiative. It's led by the government, in fairness. It has full support of the health authorities as well. So it's coming down from the very top at ministerial level, filtering through both sides of the organisations, the police and healthcare. And it's fundamentally making sure that when someone is in crisis, for whatever reason, the right resource helps them at the scene. Otherwise, it's going to start to potentially go wrong when it really, really shouldn't. So it's a great discipline. It's early days. It's working well in Humberside, and we're all watching that with great affection and trying to implement it at pace here. And there's lots of progress on that which we could share with you. And the final point is that within the control room, Jane looks after, on our behalf, the force control room. You can just imagine how busy it is. The phones never stop ringing. 999 101. If you haven't been there, just come in for half an hour. And some of the calls, even on a rainy Tuesday morning, you just wouldn't believe what's coming in. So the pressure on those control room operators is intense. I would suggest that they're world class, but it doesn't mean to say that they get it all right. And some of these areas are so they're so niche that we have in our control room people from crisis support who are medically trained. They're mental health practitioners who sit in the control room right next door to it, actually, but they're available to give advice. And I think it's from about 7 in the morning till 11 at night. So it's a good service. And when we come across someone that we believe, in an unqualified way, is in need of mental health support, they step in. They know exactly what they're doing, they can get access to records, and they can de-escalate things that we never could. So we're on the move, lots to do, but we care about it intently.
Just to add to that position in relation to the question around recruitment, about the skill sets that we recruit for, it would be wrong to say that we recruit for mental health experience specifically. We don't look specifically for that, but what we do try to do is to ensure that our recruiting is as broad as possible in terms of the diversity of life experience. So the more that we can bring people into the organisation who have experience of different perspectives, whether that's from a mental health perspective or some other professional discipline, the more of that life experience we bring in, the richer the diversity of skill sets we've got organisationally. So we're very much focused on trying to broaden that as much as possible.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what Carol had mentioned about mental health. I think it's pertinent, especially, looking at some of our young black men in Gloucester. And I just wanted to find out, is there a approved mental health practitioner in the cells, say, for instance, to follow up on those arrests and for young people, adults in crisis? I know we all have a duty of care in all sector we work in, so I'm just wondering who responds to that level of crisis?
Yes, yeah, we do. So we have 24/7 healthcare practitioners in custody. We've had that for an awfully long time. And then we have, I'm going to get the name wrong now, but effectively a team of mental health experts. So they tend to be 8 till 10, and then we can call in if anything happens throughout the night. But they're a really highly qualified team. I used to have that portfolio of custody, and it's really reassuring, and we don't take any chances. So when people come in, we do risk assessments that cover a number of things, but very much around how people are. We do ask some quite probing questions because we want to make sure that we're not taking any risks. But again, I can give you a little bit more detail offline, but just to rest assured, 24/7 care in our custody block.
Yeah, hello, my name's Derek, community builder in Barton and Treadworth. I just want to talk about this complaints procedure. I think, is it Teddy? Teddy was mentioning that the procedure was taking a year, 18 months. And obviously it goes to a panel and you're going to try and cut it down to 6 months. I want to know, is that panel 100% independent of the police?
Thank you, Derek. A couple of things are kind of conflated, so I just want to clarify. The data around the 12 to 18 months, that's police data on what's happening now. The 6 month is the objective that we have. We're saying to them, the panel are saying to them, that they should work to bringing that down to 6 months as an objective. We have a subgroup of the community legitimacy panel, which we call the Community Complaints Assessment and Review Group. And what that group does is we look at selected cases. Some of them are historic, some of them are live cases, so they are ongoing cases being investigated by the police, complaints made against officers and staff. Where there is the potential for an officer or staff member to be prosecuted by the Crown Prosecution Service, we wouldn't get involved in those cases because we could undermine the likelihood of a conviction if we get involved. Easily a defense barrister stands up and starts challenging it, saying we're influencing the police actions, right? So we don't do that, but we select ones which don't have a criminal prosecution element, but will have a disciplinary element, and we review some of those as the investigation is going on, and we give independent of the police. They are made up of community members. Us, the CLP members, and others of our colleagues are involved in that. But what we want to do is make sure that we're getting a realistic sample of what's happening, because I think it's in excess of 1,000 or so complaints the police gets per year. And if we are just doing that for half an hour or so, we're going to get through maybe 5 of those, if that, right? We want to get a representative sample of maybe somewhere between 30 to 40% of those, so we get a true picture of what is happening out in the community, right? So what we have now done is decided that we want to be able to have a quarterly meeting for an entire day from 9 to 5 to get through as many of those. All of the members are independent of the police, but I want to emphasize this point. In order for us to be effective, we need the time to do it. But we are people who have jobs. People have had to take holiday time, give up shifts, and so on to be there, right? And one of the things I'm not going to stand for happening is, let me just be blunt. If you are going to get a first-class degree as a black person in Britain, it's a big struggle. The data shows, and Professor Ravalia works in the higher education sector, he can tell you that it's very difficult for very competent, able black students to get a first class. Everywhere we turn, there is struggle, right? So after people go through and get their careers and get their professions, and professional people are turning up for a whole day, 4 times per year, to help the police make the service better. I'm telling the police you're paying those people. And you're paying them at the rate that they would be paid in their jobs. Does that make sense? So I want to put that out there because I don't want anybody to think because the police pay me for a day's work, the police can tell me how to think. But I have every right to be properly compensated if I'm going to give up my time at work to come to do a service to the police and to my broader community. So the independence certainly is there, but we made that specific decision because we want to get a clearer picture and to be more effective at what we do. And we don't think, not just policing, but you have big organizations asking black people to come in and give their whole day of their time and expect, we eat away, we don't want a sandwich and water. You understand me? So, I'm sorry, I kind of, for the benefit of those who didn't understand that, yes, I don't want our organizations in this country to think that we are not well fed and watered in our homes, right? So to think we will come to give up a whole day of our time for a ham sandwich, which some of us don't even eat, and some water, our organizations need to think again. We will be paid for our time and will be valued for what we deliver. So my brother, I hope I've answered your question.
Can I just add to that, Derek? I've sat on one of these where we watched a body cam of an incident locally, and between us, we just watched it. We felt the officer went about it all wrong, his attitude, that was our feedback, and apparently the officer took to one side and got some extra training. So it does work. If that
I'm part of a task force in Stroud, community task force, and we now get paid to attend meetings. And it's right, we should be, because we're giving up time. There's too much people volunteering, doing good work, and not being appreciated for it.
So that's what we're known for. Isn't that what black groups are known for? We have nothing, but we last longer. Anyway, it's Val and then Alfia wanted to say something. Charles, did you want to say something?
Sorry, if that's just on this point, because there's another aspect to the complaint. So if a complaint is made and it gets referred to the IOPC, and you're talking about is that totally independent? Well, that's questionable. That the IOPC, they may not be employed by the police at that time, but they are former police employees. So they're still thinking like police. To some degree, maybe I might be corrected on that, but
you're right. So they are an independent officer.
Just for the live stream.
Yes, of course, thank you. They are independent of us. Some of them are ex-police employees, but it's fair to say that Director General enjoys a much broader experience base than just policing now. And they are independent of policing. But I understand some experiences, and those lived experiences matter, so of course we'll listen.
Just to address that question, is it totally independent? And if you judge yourself, then it can't be totally independent, if that makes sense.
So the complaints that we're talking about that is raised today, that are viewed by the CLP subgroup panel are not the ones that sit within the purview of the Independent Office of Police Conduct. The IOPC tend to come in place if they are directing an investigation or managing an investigation. The ones that you're talking of here are the volume of those internal complaints that Superintendent Ali Stenner presides across. And therefore, I think what I'm hearing is that subgroup is entirely independent, but for your qualification that you make.
Yes, I agree with that totally, because I'm a member of the CLP and we're independent. But just to raise the awareness for those people that are here, because we've been given these cards that says make thanks and complaints to the police. So if a complaint is made and then it's referred to the IOPCC, there needs to be an understanding that that may not be, well, that question comes into play.
Can I just add something about the broader complaints procedure? So complaints can go directly to the Professional Standards Department of the police. There is, well, I think the first stage is you have what's known as a public feedback team, and they can help to manage things at a lower level and try to do what they call service recovery before. So at that stage, it might be a conversation, and the potential complainant might think, okay, they've got back to me, we've had a conversation, well, I don't need to take this further. They manage the service at that level. They can also direct people to PSD and talk them through the complaints process, and you can make a formal complaint against a police officer or staff member. After the police have completed the investigation and they will send you a response, there are, well, it's very blunt in the way that the language of the regulations allow them to operate. Either I am satisfied that your complaint has been upheld or words to that effect, and they give the outcome, or I'm not satisfied, and you get, I think, 28 days to appeal that to the IOPC. The IOPC won't look at every complaint because they want to filter out and look at the most serious ones. So probably where somebody was seriously injured or died or something like that. They then look at those complaints, and they might send back to the police to say, you have not investigated this properly, look at this again, and respond to the complainant. Or they, depending on the nature of it, might take over the investigation themselves. Sometimes there are cases which are so serious that the police automatically refer themselves to the IOPC at the very beginning of the incident, and the IOPC comes in and takes over that. There is also a parallel complaints process to the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, where complaints can be made about the police to Nick's department. That one, I must be honest, I don't know a lot about, but I'm just pointing out the different routes, so Nick can talk about that. And I'm saying that for complaints made to the police directly, we as that subgroup select some of those cases. And we have had situations where complaints were made and people have come to me and said, I've made a complaint and I want your panel to look at it. And I know of at least 2 cases where we've done that and given feedback to the police about it. So please talk to members of the CLP if you have concerns about complaining. We are not the final arbiters of the complaint, but we give a voice and we speak up for our community. So Nick?
So we are the final arbiters of those complaints. So once they've gone through the professional standards department process, if as a member of the community you're still not happy with the way that that complaint has been dealt with, then it comes to our office as the public's voice in policing to review how that's been done and to make sure that the process was followed properly. That was one of the things that was one of the really most important bits of the work that our office does. That's that sort of public voice in policing. When it comes to complaints, we can make sure that the process has been followed properly, and that is actually fully independent of the way the office works. We're a completely separate organisation. That's done by somebody who is an independent person. They're currently the person who's doing it at the moment is literally just about to leave. But she's a lawyer. She's she's completely separate from all of the process that goes up to that point. So that's how it gets to us. And then if you're still not happy with that, you can then go to a judicial review if you really, really want to. But that's rather expensive.
On average.
Can I just do a reminder? So we've got Val, then Alfia, and then Mr. Saunders.
Hiya, my name's Val Sims. I run an arts diversity community group. The reason the more I'm sitting here listening is the more confused I am about what the legitimacy panel does. I've been to the open days that you've had. I think there's 2 that you've done so far, or is it 3? 2. I'm still confused on what it's all about, for the full reason that my understanding is that you're helping the black community to address certain needs within the police force. Is that correct?
Yes, that is part of what we, yeah.
But what are you doing? I don't understand what the whole thing is about. And no offense, I'm just saying that we've had a couple of meetings like this. Apologies, I haven't attended all of them, but I've been to the open day, fantastic, tug of war, all that kind of stuff, getting my hands dirty and everything else. But what is it about? Because I can't see how we're helping our young people, especially, address the needs to have a better relationship with the police. That's one. Also, sorry, I'm going to say everything, but you'll have to pick net sense out of nonsense out of this. So also for the training, you mentioned about training for within the police force and so on. The algorithms that is within the system needs to be changed before anyone else can be recruited to understand what black culture, black life is about, or anybody's life is about, because it's all kind of within the database from how many centuries ago. It hasn't changed. The question I should be asking is, how will that change be implemented to help us to then be sitting on another panel or another committee meeting to then bring some change, especially for Gloucestershire or Gloucester?
Okay, so on the first question, I'm going to make an offer to you. My next meeting is in March. I'm inviting you to come and sit with us for the duration of the meeting and see for yourself what we do. Can you do that?
Is there funding?
No, okay, that's an interesting question, and I'm glad you asked it. There is, expenses are covered for that, so any expenses you incur in getting there, they can be refunded. Okay?
Well, I'll think about that. Thank you very much for the offer.
But you want your question answered, right?
No.
Yeah, so I'm telling you that that's the most effective way to sit and observe, and even I will happily have you participate in the discussion.
Right,
and then you can decide, do I want to be part of this or not? Now, in the interest of time, because I've covered some of the things we do earlier on in the presentation and some of the achievements we've had, I won't go over that, but I can talk to you again one-to-one in the session which follows, okay?
Yeah,
when we're
thank you,
having
Teddy.
a
But
meal.
can I just say, I'm aware of what you do. It's what I've noticed or I've witnessed being within the system, like going to your open day. It's fantastic. You're getting involved with the community, but I can't see how it's going to help our young people.
Okay, so let me use the example of the open day. If I reduce the role of the CLP, we have a whole governing document, terms of reference document. But if I reduce it down to 2 simple things, we try, on the one hand, to hold the police to account on all of these issues we are discussing in how they use their powers, which are quite coercive toward members of these ethnically diverse communities. One, and we try, on the other hand, to build good relationships, which part of which is done through those sports days. And you will recall that at the sports day, we also brought 2 barristers from London to come and talk to our young people and the wider community about what their rights are when they interact with the police. So it's not just about fun and games on the day. We're also equipping our young people to know their rights when they encounter the police. Many times, black young men are pulled over at the side of the road, and at that point, there's nothing to arrest them for. But they know that something is going wrong, and they don't have the knowledge or the skills to articulate what is going wrong and know the steps to take afterward. And so that comes out in them challenging the police in a way, and then they get arrested. If they are equipped with the knowledge about the complaints procedure, if they are equipped with their knowledge of their rights, then they take note of those things and they follow up after that. So I'm saying at the very sports day, we were doing two things, the two things we are here for. One, if a young man plays football with a police officer, he may see him on the street afterward and say, I recognize you, and have a conversation, just on a human level. And that in itself, part of the problem we have is that many communities are policed by officers who don't live there. They are not known by the community, they don't know the community. So when the police respond to an incident, which usually we call the police at times of high stress, right? That's not a time to make friends because everybody is highly stressed at that time. But suppose you've met the officer in a basketball game or a football game, or we had some lunch together, and you know each other. When you see each other in that highly stressed situation, it makes the interaction better, doesn't it? So that's one of the things we're trying to do, to build relationships, and at the same time, through all the other things I've mentioned, to equip our communities to, assert their rights and to hold the police to account when that isn't done. And I'm saying to you that you're welcome on board, the whole community. Please apply, okay? We have 2 desks at the back that gives you information about the panels that you can be part of. Come and join us.
Can I just say one more thing? Sorry, I know the time is running, but what I've noticed is that we have hardly any young people here, and each time you have a meeting, we don't have any young representative here. So what I'm saying is that somehow maybe having a particular night or a day on GFM, having a discussion, because there's loads of young people that are listening on there. I don't know how it would work, but we need to have some sort of a change, because each time, but all I know is that each time there's a knife crime, a death, right? We haven't resolved that. There's always this continued thing going on, and there's more death coming if we don't make any changes. And that's what I'm concerned about.
I want to hear your suggestions, my sister. We are to be held to account by you. And right, Mr. Reed, you're right. Sorry, thank you. You're right to challenge me and the panel about what we're doing, because we're not elected officials or anything, and we are speaking in your name. You're right to challenge us. But what I'm saying this evening is for you to tell us what those changes are. We've told you the objectives we're working on. We've told you the actions we're asking the police to take. If you don't think those are the appropriate ones, I'm all ears. It's not as big as Obama's, but they work just as well. All right? So please tell us, my sister, I am happy to listen. I'm happy for you to come to our meetings. And this year we're going to start having some of those meetings in public and invite the community to come along and see what we are doing internally, okay? All right, there you go. So tell us the changes. We'll write them down this evening and we'll implement them.
Right, it's Alfia, then Mr. Saunders, and then did you want to come back in again, Cynthia? Did you want to come back in after? Yes. So it's Alfia, Mr. Saunders, and then Cynthia.
Thank you. A couple of questions, and they do relate to outcomes, but also some questions, but there are also questions that relate to operational policing and professional standards. The first question is actually in relation to professional standards, operational policing, and I'm pleased to tell you I wanted to come to that session this year in the summer, but unfortunately I was double booked. So I think it's really important that people do get the education about what their rights are, and without looking at the outcome, the one around stop and search, I'd be quite keen to see that extended to individual property, their homes, and what their rights are in relation to that. And my question is, under what circumstances can the police enter someone's property without a warrant? And it'd be useful for the community to be able to get that answer to that question tonight. The second question I have as well is in relation to, hold on a second, because I'm getting old, my memory's not that good anymore. Right, where did I write it? Yes, it was in relation to Objective 8, better services to victims of crime and ethnically diverse communities. I know the police, certainly in the last year, have come under considerable criticism in terms, just generally and nationally, in terms of their failure to investigate crime. And my question is, given the limited resources that are available within all public services, the police included, given that you've got this outcome 8 to increase to provide a better service to victims of crime from ethnically diverse communities, what I'm asking is, what data do you have and what do you know about ethnic minority victims of crime? What are your plans for recording it going forward? And how can you encourage me to report a crime again in the future if you've had a negative experience of reporting that crime? It's for the entire panel. The operational policing one obviously is for the police force, but it's a question for the panel because the outcomes belong to you all.
Thank you for the questions. I hope I do them justice. I'll probably need a bit of support because I was trying to write on my lap at an angle and listen to the questions. But in relation to the one about powers of entry, we don't go into people's homes lightly. We don't want to go in without lawful authority. Most of it comes under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, Section 17 and Section 18. Broadly speaking, and I'm summarising it for effect, to save life, we can enter a property, but we can also enter to make an arrest for an arrestable offence in certain circumstances. Beyond that, fundamentally we would need to go to court to get a warrant, whether it's for drugs, to search for firearms, and sometimes under the counter-terrorism legislation. So there is a piece of legislation that is in effect our Bible, and we have to stick within the law. On the recording of ethnicity, we do try our best to record it. It's not just crimes, it's incidents as well. 100,000 of them over that a year. And we are inspected by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary. They do fire and rescue services now, and they produce about every 18 months a very detailed report after a very, very thorough inspection of most of what we do. And they focus and publish the results in relation to our ability to effectively capture age and ethnicity. We're getting much better at it. Sometimes that's quite difficult when you're talking to someone in trauma, in crisis, on a 999 call. You really want to get the essential information about where they are and how we can dispatch someone to go and help them. Asking them to tell us their date of birth, their ethnicity, and their gender might be seen to be the wrong moment to be doing that. And sometimes some of the reports that come into our control room are on behalf of the victim. So it could be a neighbour. And what we don't want is necessarily the ethnicity of the neighbour. We want it of the victim. So there are certain occasions when we literally don't know the ethnicity, but we do map it, we measure it, and we're held to account for it.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Yeah. Against the 8 outcomes, it'd be really useful if you can come equipped with some data that enables and reassures people that things have moved on, that they can see the improvements. And I don't know if presumably you should be able to evaluate and collect data against all of these outcomes, because presumably when you set them, the objectives, they were smart objectives.
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be really good to see that.
Yes, I've probably got it somewhere in a pack that I'm holding here.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I asked this question last year, so.
Yeah, we'll
Year 2, I'm asking the question again. So year 3, hopefully, we'll be able to receive some data from you.
I've probably got it on my lap, but we'll certainly share it for you. Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Helen's going to give a proper answer now. Helen, thank you.
Manage expectations. Hello, everybody. I'm Helen Pritchard. So I'm the Constabulary's Victim Lead, and I'm the Victim Hub Manager. So the Victims Hub is new to the Constabulary, and what we are looking to do is focus on our service to victims. We are building this in implementation phases. So just managing your expectations. We launched in December, and that's supporting victims of domestic abuse. But what that means is within the Victims Hub, we're really looking at the service we're specifically providing to victims. And as part of that, we are looking to make sure that we are gathering all the right data around those victims. So we absolutely will be asking questions and recording about ethnicity, protected characteristics. And then what we will be able to do when we've got that rich data is really look at the work streams to drive barriers around reporting to us and that support and service. So no data answer, I'm afraid, but the question was forwarded to me from the last meeting, and I did forward a response to say the challenges we have in control room around recording that data, but that's fed into the building of the new Victims Hub. So our new system is allowing us to record that data. We are asking every victim that we come in contact with the protective characteristics, including ethnicity, and from that we absolutely then want to work on those work streams around what that data is showing us, but probably more importantly, what the data isn't showing us, and that is who isn't reporting to us and who aren't we able to support, and how do we get better at that. So I guess it's just a little add-in that I will absolutely be working together with the Better Together team, the community legitimacy panels, around that specific objective around service to victims. So I know it doesn't really answer the question, but what I'm hoping to do is just build a little bit of confidence that we are aware it's an issue, and actually it's something we really want to focus on and see how we can work together to improve that.
And if I could just steal another moment, Jane's just sat to my right in saying we'd be very pleased to invite you to come and see how things work in the force control room. It's a very vibrant environment. If you would like to come along, we can arrange that for you. We'd love you to come and see it in action and give us some feedback after that. Thank you.
Yes, in reference to priority 3, which is a bold, very bold initiative, because it says bring an end to the disproportionate use of, bring an end. That is 0%. So bring an end to the disproportionate use of stop and search towards members of the ethnically diverse communities. What I would like to see when we come to forums like these and next time is to see data as it relates to Gloucestershire. Because whenever we think of disproportionate stop and search, the first thing that enters my mind is a national figure. And the national figure is bad. I'm sure, as I've heard the data, that in terms of Gloucestershire, it is not as damning as a national figure. So if we can bring to these meetings to show that it is ending, so if every time we have a meeting like this and we can see the reduction in terms of percentage, then that is giving us the confidence that at least something is happening. So the next forum, you might have that data here in terms of what is the disproportionate use of stop and search in regards to black people in Gloucestershire. Right?
Thanks, Anthony. You're right about that.
Yes.
And so we're going to set a benchmark right away. The chief has the current data. I'm going to ask him to tell the public, and then next year we have something to reference the then data against.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. So just in relation to stop and search in the county, this was in the month of November, so there is a little bit of a lag on some of the data. We can bring the other data up to speed when we get December and January coming through. But for black members of the public, 3.8 times more likely to be stopped. For Asian members of the public, less likely to be stopped than a white person. The stop and search find rate, which has been published in a draft report from the inspectorate. We can't talk too much about it yet because it's still being quality assured before it gets published in March. But we had a look at the draft report just at the start of the week when it came in on Monday, and it shows a table of the find rate. So it's a crude indication of the success of the judgment made by the officer on who to stop and search for a legitimate reason. And it would appear that we're the second highest, most successful force in the country at find rate. I think it's about 29.9%. We'll call it 30%. So what's promising and a worthy metric for you to be briefed on is how successful and how good the judgment is of our staff when they pick and choose who they believe they should legitimately stop and search. Because the higher the percentage of people where we find something,
the better in terms of it being an appropriately used instrument to keep everyone safe from harm. And in terms of body-worn video, that's another metric that's reviewed and looked at monthly in our performance meetings, which is chaired by the DEP. 88% of the time when stop and searches are carried out, body-worn video is switched on. It's not enough, it should be 100%, we've got work to do, but it's moving up. So why don't we capture that data and use it as a baseline for all future meetings, and of course we'll share it with you, good or not so good.
I just want to ask an awkward question of, we got all the bosses in the room, I guess. The find rate, is there a disproportionate difference in the find rate from stop and searches, first of all? Do we know in terms of ethnicity? Okay. I think that's one important thing. So we are stopping and searching 4 times more black people than we are white people. We're stopping much more of the black population. So we need to know how successful those stop and searches are. That's the benchmark that we've been asked about, I think is really important. And yeah, I think Anthony's point, it's not about kind of stop and search altogether, because we all know that that's a relatively important thing, but bringing down that disproportion in terms of the find rate, I think is really important. Exactly that, yeah.
Right, can I just say we've got another 5 minutes. I think Cynthia wanted to say something, and then is it Jenny at the front? Yeah. And is there anybody else? Would you like to indicate now as we're going to round up? And Bren. Can I just say, though, from my personal point of view, I hate these numbers and that, because at the end of the day, if you give me statistics on Gloucestershire, the number of black people is going to be less than if you did just Gloucester, Barton and Tredworth. So sometimes I just like hard figures. There was 10 black people compared to 1 white person. That's what I like to know. That makes more sense to me. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah. Sorry, my question is really quick, and I didn't want this evening to end without us looking at the concerns that you brought up, Teddy, earlier about young, vulnerable black females being stopped, and you were talking about a working group looking at violence against women and girls, and I know my own experience. I got stopped on the M5 coming back from Birmingham during COVID, when we were all told not to travel because of COVID. And that was a frightening, I haven't been stopped for a while, so that experience was very frightening, coming home sort of just before midnight. I'd been to a funeral and I'd stopped off with family. And so what I want to know is what are we going to do about the previous reports that you said, because I wasn't here when those came up, and what's going to be the outcome, what's the action plan looking like, and how are we going to change things for vulnerable young black females? And yeah.
Thank you very much for flagging that up, Cynthia. Last time, I know there were the last panel meeting last January, engagement forum, sorry. I can recall about 6 specific incidents which members of the community shared, their experiences of adverse experiences of policing, that is. And we have followed up after that, and I'm aware that Superintendent Alice Stenner had ensured that those individual matters were investigated and had reached out to the particular persons impacted by that. So I think there has been follow-up, but those were personal matters, so it stayed quiet in that sense. On the broader question of how are we going to fix this, we have been putting different suggestions to the police. One of them, for example, is whenever someone is going to be stopped, a female is going to be stopped, why not have that person, why not tell all the officers to allow that person a couple of minutes to call a member, identify themselves as a police officer, or why not allow that member of the public to call a family member or friend and say, look, I have been pulled over at this location by this officer. It gives them an element of reassurance that if anything happens to them, somebody knows who they last interacted with, and that can be followed up. Now that, we believe, is a sensible solution, but there's a policing element to that which could be compromised. Suppose, for example, I am carrying drugs in my car, I'm searched, and the car is searched. The police might then be led to carry out a search on my home. Now, suppose I call a member of my family who know that I have drugs in the home. You see what's happening? The potential for destruction of evidence, right? So from a policing perspective, that's the argument that comes back at us, that in most of the cases that will be completely understandable and legitimate to do, but in the few cases where that might be a policing risk to undermine, if they have specific intelligence on the person they are pulling over. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, I still think we should lean to the side of giving people the benefit of the doubt in those circumstances, especially given the context in which we operate. But I can't argue away that there's a legitimate point the police have from the other side. So this is why we are saying we need to find practical solutions. And so we're asking, and please, this evening before you go, my sisters, please put your name forward to say, I will be one of those who step up to do this, and to sit down with the police officers and tell them what my experience was and what they should have done differently, and we find some solutions. I really think before we go, if it's even 3 people who start and we go out into the community and find others, because we have to make the service better for all our people, right? And we can't just see the obstacles. We need help to find the solutions as well. I hope I've answered the question.
Right, we've got Jen at the front and then Bren, and then we're going to have to draw it to a close unless somebody has desperately needs to say something.
Good evening, everyone. I was actually going to make the same point about women being stopped. I wanted to know, really, what is the thinking behind a police officer, why they would want to stop a lone woman? Most of our, especially ethnic women, do late shifts at work. They're working, coming from hospital, they might be tired, and they're coming home. So, of course, they're going to be on the road late. But yet still, I would like to know why a police officer would want to stop them. I'm not talking about those that they may be checking and know the number plates and know that they've been watching them for whatever investigation they're doing. I'm talking about normal people just going home, minding their own business, going home late from whatever occasion. Why would a police officer feel that they should be stopping them? And how many Caucasian women would they stop in that situation if they saw them going home late? Would they stop them? What is the thinking behind that? You know, there is a lot of media narrative that is negative to black people. The media don't seem to be accountable to anyone. They can do whatever they like and destroy a life, and it doesn't matter. And so because of that, the perspective that people have of black people, whether they're in schools, in other institution, is negative from the outset. If I raise my voice to someone because they've done something wrong, I'm seen as aggressive. But if a English or Caucasian person raise their voice, they're seen like, oh, they're just angry, this shouldn't have happened. What is the thinking behind, and how is that going to stop? Because, you know, a lot of people, a lot of ethnic people will not join the police force. If they do, they have to toe the line and not be heard. And so I'd like to know how you deal with that, and what percentage, since all this campaign has been going on, of black, ethnic or Asian has now joined the police because they see hope that their understanding has changed.
I'll pass to Richard in a moment on the data, and I've got a little bit of the headline data around representation in the constabulary at the moment. But in a nutshell, an officer needs to have a reason to stop a vehicle. It could be a variety of things, and you've touched on one of them. It could be a vehicle default. It could be the manner of driving, perhaps speeding or swerving on the road. Drink driving could be a consideration. The number of people that drive under the influence of drugs, it can be deadly. No, absolutely.
But that's what happens. That happens, though, doesn't it?
it's not a legitimate reason to
Of
be
course
doing
it's
that.
not, but that's what I'm saying. You're sort of saying the reasons, but I think a lot of black people would say they're being profiled.
And I
You can see that for statistics.
I understand. I'm trying to answer the question as to why would a police officer legitimately be able to stop a vehicle? It shouldn't be because of racial profiling. You might have a view on whether you believe it to be that, but it has to be legitimate. Yeah, lived experience of it, of course, and I thank you. No, completely, and I don't dispute that at all. There's many lived experiences. We've heard some of them tonight. We've been working with the panel for 3.5 years. They are real, and we're trying to stop that. That's partly why we're insisting on the use of body-worn video. It helps us to hold our own staff to account. If it's not for legitimate reasons, it could be for a marker, potentially on the vehicle itself, relating to another force area. But the point is it has to be legitimate, fair, and withstand scrutiny, which brings back into play the value of the legitimacy panel. Because we can scrutinize the data, but it'd be much better if the panel scrutinized it, so that they took a view with their own lived experiences to test whether or not there was a legitimate reason. And if there isn't, it's either a disciplinary matter or a learning matter, and we want to know about it so that we can deal with the specific individual cases and go back to those that were stopped to apologize and try and service recover the situation. In terms of the data, in terms of representation, let me just give you the latest, because we've got, again, some way to go. The percentage of ethnic communities in the workforce as of the 1st of January 2024, 4%. So that's against a local county population off the back of the 2021 census of 6.93. So we're not meeting our target, our ambition, and we want to push on beyond that. I know that Richard is probably trying to grab the microphone from me. So.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any further statistical data other than I think the one that you've already shared, Rob, but I think this goes back to the point about who are we trying to recruit, and really what we want to be able to do is to reach as broad a section of communities as we possibly can. So it's how we do that, and it's how we really, lean on you and your support and your help to achieve that as much as anything. I think just a couple of other bits of data that might be helpful to understand in relation to the workforce. In terms of the breakdown of that 4%, if you look at it in terms of the different categories of resources we have, so PCSOs, police staff, and then officers, they're broken down as follows. So our PCSOs, we are 7.3%, so we are certainly better in a PCSO space than elsewhere. Excuse me. In staff, we're at 2.3%, so that's actually our lowest, and for officers it's 2.6%. So we've got quite a long way to go. Reasonable success with our PCSO recruitment, but we've got a long way to go in the other two categories.
Sorry, just to come back to your point around being stopped as a female, and I can see your emotion as well. I think the Chief has pointed out the legitimate reasons why cars should be stopped, vehicles should be stopped, whoever's in it. But to answer your question, do I think over the years, recently or historically, officers have stopped vehicles outside of legitimate reasons? Yes, yeah, I do. Because that might be unconscious bias or just bias, but and that's the point you're making, and I take that. So just to echo Teddy's ask, please, and I'll be part of that group, come forward and help us a little bit, because we sit as police, and I'm really experienced and have had a lot of interactions with the public over the years, but ultimately it has to come from yourselves, or it doesn't have to. It would be lovely if you would work with us to help us on that particular topic, because it's a real topic.
I would like to just say finally on that point that I've also been emphasizing with the DCC that in the meantime, whilst we work on this, there ought to be some communication that goes out to officers to say around the preventative element, to say, look, we need to exercise better judgment when we are stopping lone females. So if you have a legitimate reason to stop someone, should you consider, is there a well-lit area in which you can pull this person over? Is there an area which is where you have a bigger population center where it would make people feel more reassured? So there's a question on the preventative side as well to exercise better judgment. So maybe some communication can go out to say, even where there's legitimate reason, if there is nothing that's going to compromise what the officer is trying to achieve, if that stop can happen in a location which makes a woman feel safer, then by all means it should happen there. And I'd also like to just give a shout out to Sandra, who I believe is online. Many of you may not have met Sandra Samuel, but she's a force of nature. Right? She is a petite woman, black woman of Jamaican heritage, but don't mess with her, all right? So
Tell them the saying. Tell them the saying.
She little, but she tell her.
All right.
She's small, but she's forceful. So I'm saying this because this group I'm asking you to be part of, ladies, Sandra will be also central to that. She manages the Better Together team in policing. And I know she will be shouting behind her screen right now saying, yes, Teddy told them. So please, I'm begging you again, talk to me, any member of the community legitimacy panel, or those two wonderful young ladies at the back who will be happy to collect contact information. And I just emphasize this. When the community legitimacy panel collects data from the community, it's kept by one person who works by the police, works as our administrative support in the police. We don't pass on that data to any other policing department. It is only used for our purposes of contacting you. So please be reassured. Your name won't end up in custody records or anything like that. Not on our account, all right? So I wanted to make that point.
Can I just say we've got Bren next, and then that's it. But I know there's a couple of people wanted to ask questions, but we've run out of time because it was advertised as finishing at 8:30. So I'm just asking, I don't know if the panel will still be about for people to come up and talk to them afterwards. Yes?
Mike, Teddy. Mike.
I just want to emphasize that we are very grateful to you for coming out this evening, and we are not going to keep you here all this time and not give you some nice Caribbean food on a cold winter's evening, right? So we have a lovely Caribbean buffet at the back. We have another half an hour, and I'm sure Pastor Charles won't kick us out at dead on 9 o'clock. So we will be able to have a meal together, and Pastor has reassured me that it's okay for you to get your food and come back in here and sit and eat, so we can still keep talking for another half an hour or so afterward, okay? So over to you, Brent.
Thanks, Teddy. And Bren, I'm a member of the Legitimacy Panel, proud to be so, really. Can I thank Val, my friend Val, for the comments that she made? And Teddy, going back to the point about we're looking for solutions today as well. So I think one of the things that Val highlighted, and I won't speak for Val, but she reminds me day after day after day in terms of racial inequalities and rethinking and hopefully being a good ally. So I thank Val immensely. But I think one of the things that we can take up, Teddy, as solutions is to build a program of engagement activities into our plan going forward. So what do I mean by that? We've talked about some of the events that we do once a year. We've talked about some of the things we're doing in terms of the public engagement. Let's make it more, I think that's what Val said, let's make it more rigorous and whatever, so we can get that out to the communities we serve in good time, so we can say, on month 2 this, month 4 this, month 6 this. The point I'm making is let's get a program of engagement out there, really, rather than what we've got at the moment, and what we've got is good. I'd also like to echo what Rod said in terms of Donna Lawton and next to her, Corey, who have come to the county, and it's just Bren's view and whatever, really, but I would absolutely welcome people to have a conversation with Donna, really. I think if you looked at every aspect, it's about kindness and community engagement. That's just my personal view.
Thank you, Bren. And I was very rude at the beginning not to introduce you to Kerry Patterson as well, who is one of our newish chief superintendents. And thank you for coming as well this year. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's it.
Well,
that's
listen,
it. You had your lot.
Ladies and gentlemen, we haven't done too badly for time. It's 8:32, isn't it?
I had the mic.
Thank you very much. So can we have a round of applause for our facilitators, please? Carol and Jamil at the back. So, again, I just like to extend our thanks to Pastor Charles and the church family here, who for the second consecutive year has welcomed us into this space. Of course, we will move the meetings around to different locations, but Pastor Charles has been very welcoming, and thank you very much. My sincere thanks to all the police officers and staff, and including the PCSOs who are out there in the cold. Thank you all very much. I hope they somehow will hear that it's time to come in for a warm meal, right? Okay, so my thanks to those who have joined us online. And again, community members, brothers and sisters, friends, and even if I have a few enemies, much love to you all. Thank you all for coming out, and we really appreciate your support. Again, please tell us if we have the objectives right. The email address for the panel is legitpanelgloss@gmail.com. That's LEGIT, legitpanelgloss@gmail.com. So if you miss us this evening, email us. Please share with the young ladies at the back. And there's also a QR code on one of the documents that gives you the opportunity to scan it and give some feedback. So, we haven't tasted the food yet, but I have it on good authority. That's really good food. So can we also give a round of applause for the caterer and all of us who are in here? My sincere thanks to all the police staff and legitimacy panel members who put the work in to make this evening happen, and including the technical staff. And one final round of applause to our outstanding choir, who will do a couple songs for us as we queue up to have the food at the back and we can filter back in. Thank you all very much.
Quiet whiz.
Thank you. Oh, good. Thank you.